Internet. Welcome to Film Theory.
You are now on the fastest available route to enlightenment.
Today we're getting right into the news. The local news, that is. More specifically, we're covering the scariest local news broadcast that you've ever seen. None other than the creepy internet darling, Local 58. Never heard of it? Well, I'm not surprised. It's a relatively underground series here on YouTube that was recommended to me over on Twitter. MattPatGT, by the way, if you want to follow and offer theory suggestions. And wow, I am so glad it was shown to me. This is the type of horror that really sticks with me. Disturbing psychological horror that just creeps under your skin and stays there. It's a series that reminds me a lot of Marble Hornets, if you're familiar with that one. Seeing a public service announcement outright tell people to do their patriotic duty by offing themselves, and then saying that that message will repeat until there are none left to read it. Even after watching it this many times, I still get goosebumps. The long story short here is that I'm excited to cover this series. One, because we all need a break from Disney's domination over the universe sometimes, and two, this entire series totals 20 minutes worth of video. Not 20 minutes an episode, 20 minutes total. And it's available for free right here, right now on YouTube. So there is no reason why, if you haven't seen it before, you shouldn't catch up with it right now real quick, so you know exactly what I'm talking about as I go through today's theory. In fact, I'm linking to it right here in the top right hand corner of the screen, so go check it out, get creeped out, and then come right back, no detours. Otherwise, YouTube will punish me algorithmically. That's not even a joke, it's true, so please go watch it, but then come back. Okay, you ready? Well, too late.
There are no faces.
At first glance, Local 58 appears to be a quirky little local access channel, the type you'd find in any small hometown around the US, until you very quickly veer off the tracks, both literally and figuratively, finding yourself trapped in a world of disturbed dash cams, really aggressive weather alerts, and self-help videos that seem more like a cult's brainwashing manual. And the best part is, it's just getting started. Local 58 looks like it'll have plenty more broadcasts coming to a station or YouTube channel near you, all to tell its horrific story of alien invasion. But what exactly that story is and where it's headed is what we're covering today. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsors.
Subscribe to Film Theory.
In case you haven't seen Local 58's full slate of episodes, even though I did link to it and told you that it's only 20 minutes long, but I get it. Sometimes you don't want to do that sort of thing. Sometimes you just want me to tell you everything you need to know for the theory. So here you go. Here's a real brief rundown of the 7 episodes they've released in the order that they were published, which doesn't appear to be the order in which the videos are set in, but we're gonna get to that. The first video is called You Are on the Fastest Available Route, and is simply some dash cam footage of someone driving through a storm at night. It is super normal until the GPS system starts telling the driver to go off on abandoned roads and turn off his headlights.
Then, in 300 feet, turn off your headlights.
We see a flash, whoever's behind the camera runs, and the camera is knocked to the ground Blair Witch style. It's followed by Contingency, which appears to be a government announcement from the 1960s telling viewers that the United States has been defeated by a foreign country. In it, we see a series of instructions about how Americans should off themselves to preserve the dignity of the country, with the ominous phrase that this message will repeat until there are none left to read it. The video ends with the Local 58 station making a correction that the message was a hoax. But it's a little late for that one. Let's hope people weren't too quick on the trigger there, literally. Video 3, Weather Service. It starts as an ordinary local weather alert, which is already scary enough because of those really traumatic sirens. But this isn't any snow watch or flood warning that you're used to. This is about a meteorological event that makes it unsafe for people to go outside and look at the sky. There's a correction shortly after that, though, that tells viewers that the event is indeed safe for all to view and that the warning has been lifted, followed by instructions to go outside now. The video goes back and forth on whether we are or aren't safe before we end with a shot of the moon coming into frame and people screaming in the background. Scared yet? The fourth video station ID is largely the same, with a few new messages like, look away, it does not matter. there are other receivers, safety in numbers. It also tells us that the frequency of the channel is 476 megahertz. Judging by me pointing this little detail out, you might rightly assume that this will become important later on. Moving on to a show for children, this one's all about a cartoon skeleton wandering through a graveyard at night, so pretty standard children's programming for 4:15 in the morning. The skeleton lies down in his own grave and dies when the moon passes over him. You might be sensing a pattern here. Video number 6 is called A Look Back, and it initially appears to be just a recap of programming on the channel before it gets interrupted by more messages that say, "We send signals to ourselves through their domain. Did we really believe they wouldn't add their own?" And lastly, the most recent video is called Real Sleep, and it's probably the weirdest of the bunch. It initially looks like an instructional video about how to get the best sleep possible, but true to form, things start getting weird when it goes through an exercise that attempts to erase the concept of facial recognition from the viewer, then bombarding them with subliminal messages like, "This is your time now, there is work to be done, we are our own gods, you owe the messenger." And that's the channel, my friends. So what on earth does all this mean? Obviously, we got ourselves themes about sleep, the moon, and messages coming from outside of Local 58's broadcasts. That makes the conclusion that we're seeing something to have to do with aliens a pretty easy one to deduce, but it also leaves us with 3 main questions. 1, what are those aliens doing through Local 58? 2, what do they want? And 3, why are they interfering with local broadcast networks when they could very easily just be watching syndicated early 2000s episodes of Frasier? Let's start first with what we believe the aliens are actually doing, which is hijacking the radio signals through Local 58's airwaves. Interestingly, hijacking radio signals for public television is a thing that's happened throughout history, though not by aliens, at least that we know of. One of the most famous examples is the Max Headroom incident from 1987. A local TV station in Chicago was playing an episode of Doctor Who when the transmission was interrupted by a strange, rambling figure in a rubber mask of 1980s cartoon personality Max Headroom. This goes on for nearly 2 minutes, during which time he spouts advertising slogans, references Michael Jackson, and gets spanked by a fly swatter. While the Max Headroom incident wasn't the work of aliens, the FCC never did catch the culprit. And it's an example of how someone can hack into local TV signals even with low-tech equipment. Station ID indicates that the frequency of Local 58 is 476 megahertz, and interestingly enough, we have indeed detected unidentified radio signals from space of similar frequency. Radio telescopes in British Columbia have picked up numerous fast radio bursts, or FRBs, from as far as light years away, and at frequencies as low as 400 megahertz, signals that scientists can't really explain the origins of. This kind of mysterious radio burst would lead us to believe that extraterrestrial invaders could use similar frequencies to intercept television broadcasts. And in the Local 58 universe, aliens are using those radio waves to send messages directly to us viewers, either subversively through programming like a cartoon for children, teaching kids to lay down and look at the moon like the cute cartoon skeleton, and sometimes in much more direct ways, like telling us to just look at the sky in weather service. This is all confirmed by that brief message in A Look Back. We send signals to ourselves through their domain. Seems to be talking about humans' use of antennas and satellites up in space. The they is presumably some kind of extraterrestrial. Their domain is space. And then the message continues, did we really believe they wouldn't add their own? Calling out that the signals are coming back to Earth having been altered, tampered with by the aliens with their own agenda. In short, there are multiple voices coming at us through the Local 58 broadcasts. One coming from the aliens and one coming from someone else, either a scientist or someone working at the station who knows what's going on. We see them fighting for control of the screen in weather service. First we're told to remain indoors, do not look at the sky, but is then followed seconds later with the meteorological event is safe for all to view. Warning has been lifted. But that all brings us to question number 2. What do these aliens want? I mean, the goal is clearly for us to look at the moon, as demonstrated by the cartoon and the weather report, but why? In this case, it seems like the series still has some unanswered questions, but we're clearly dealing with some kind of lunar bird box situation, where as soon as you look at the moon, you die, or you go crazy. While the mechanics of the actual moon kill are unclear, it seems like they're exerting an influence by hijacking people's willingness to follow instructions that they hear on the news. It's counting on the fact that we as humans believe of what we're told on television and will follow it without question. There's no bolder example of this than the instructions that are found in Contingency. This is by far the most chilling video of the series, which appears to play an emergency broadcast segment that was supposed to have been destroyed back in the 1970s. It looks like a message that's related to the Cold War, an era in which nuclear tensions were high. The threat of death from above was more real than it ever had been in America's history, and the anti-communist bloc propaganda was everywhere. In other words, it was a time in which Americans were feeling pressured to be patriotic and to fear the dangers that were coming from outside their borders. Contingency looks like it was probably the first transmission that the aliens sent via Local 58, based both on the date by which the message is supposed to be destroyed and in the overall video quality. Now, what happened after that? Since not everybody immediately followed the instructions on the television to off themselves, the aliens then resorted to messaging that they would hope would get people to kill each other rather than themselves and their families. And that's where Real Sleep comes in. A video that we see is from 1983. While Real Sleep starts like a normal, or at least acceptably weird instructional video that seems like it wants to help people have restful sleep, the message is quickly corrupted by the odd inclusion of distorted faces and subliminal messages. Some of them seem like they're encouraging violence, as I mentioned before, whereas others sound like they're against the idea of sleep itself, including sleep is not civilized, the pure of mind do not slumber, and when we sleep, we die. So why exactly would the aliens care about people's ability to recognize faces or sleep quality? I mean, I'm up late writing these scripts a lot of times, but you don't see me running with open arms to my lunar overlords. Unless by lunar overlord you mean Wendy's late night snack menu. No, it's not to make people docile or sleepy, it's to make them hate each other. Psychology studies show that a failure to subliminally recognize pain in other people's faces and sleep deprivation both lead to a decrease in empathy for other humans. If Real Sleep is trying to plant messages in people's minds about the work to be done, and then also blunts viewers' recognition of faces and conditions them to not sleep, all of it is pointing to a concerted mind-controlling effort that hopes to get humans to kill each other. All the videos, from messing with GPS signals, to messing with people's understanding of faces and sleep, to children's programming and weather alerts, and even to quote-unquote governmental warnings, all of it is pointing to one concerted goal for the aliens: wipe us out by using our signals to trick us into offing ourselves. But why? I mean, yes, we're sending broadcasts through their domain, but that basically just amounts to a cosmic noise complaint. Why jump to kill us all off? Well, think about the initial timing of the alien transmissions. We can't pinpoint exactly when Contingency aired, but it's safe to assume that it was in or before 1970, since it says the message is not for use after 11/13/1970. We already talked about the fact that this was during the Cold War, but what I didn't specifically mention about that time period was that it was also the pinnacle of the space race. Like the Cold War, the space race was also a battle between the US and the USSR, but this time it was for cosmic supremacy, or at least lunar supremacy, and it featured the first ever moon landing by the Apollo 11 team in 1969. Now, I'm clearly a theorist, but it seems like Local 58 may be playing off of some of the conspiracy theories that exist around this massive scientific achievement, specifically the theory that the Apollo 11 crew saw aliens when they were visiting the moon. As the theory goes, after the lunar module landed with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin inside, there were a few minutes of silence between them and Mission Control back in Houston. This is just a true fact of what happened that day. But some people claim that in the period of silence, you can hear a discussion between Aldrin and Armstrong on their private medical channels about extraterrestrial objects. As a result, they rush to complete their mission, planting research mirrors on the moon, and then quickly hightail it out of there. Whether these, in my opinion, highly unlikely conspiracy theories are true isn't the point here. The point is that the timing works out for this event, the moon landing, to be the basis for Local 58's aliens and their motivation to want to kill us. We've made contact, and we've made them mad. And what's not up for debate is that Apollo 11 really did put mirrors on the surface of the moon as part of a way to track the moon's orbit using lasers back on Earth. And it just so happens that a few of the strange messages from Local 58's broadcasts do indeed mention mirrors. Weather Service explicitly warns people to avoid mirrors and later says, "He found me through the mirror." Moon alien conspirators also believe that the reason the space program ended as quickly as it did, and the reason that the Apollo 11 astronauts weren't more celebratory when they returned to Earth, was because because they saw disturbing, disheartening things up in space and couldn't tell the public. And we know for a fact that someone working at Local 58 knows what's really going on here and is trying to get the message out, but just can't, which would seem to line up with that. Regardless, it certainly seems that the space program is responsible for the animosity that these aliens have for life on Earth. Maybe the aliens want revenge for being disturbed. Maybe the movie First Man is true, and Neil Armstrong is just really kind of a bummer to hang out with. We just don't have enough of this story right now to know the truth. But we do have one last hint about where the story might go, and that's in the first published video, which also happens to be the most recent from a timeline perspective. You are on the fastest available route. If you look closely, for a brief moment, the video actually shows us one of the extraterrestrial creatures, and the person who encounters it doesn't seem to have survived. So after trying to make mankind destroy itself for decades, maybe the aliens have decided to take matters into their own hands. We'll just have to wait for the next broadcast of Local 58 to be sure. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And the truth is out there.